In 2026, something subtle yet deeply transformative is happening in the world of enterprise technology. It's not making loud headlines, it's not being announced in flashy press releases, and it's not dominating social media trends. But inside the infrastructure of some of the world's largest companies, a quiet shift is underway. Big companies, from multinational corporations to government contractors and global financial institutions, are increasingly switching to Linux. Not all at once, not publicly, and not always completely, but steadily, deliberately, and with long-term intent. This shift is not driven by ideology or nostalgia for open source culture, but by cold, practical business realities that have become impossible to ignore. For decades, proprietary operating systems dominated corporate environments. They offered familiarity, vendor support, and a perception of stability that made them the default choice for enterprises. Entire IT departments were built around managing licenses, upgrades, compatibility matrices, and vendor contracts. Over time, this created deeply entrenched ecosystems that were difficult to challenge. However, as technology evolved and the scale of digital operations exploded, the weaknesses of these closed systems became increasingly visible. Costs rose, flexibility declined, and innovation slowed. Linux, once considered an outsider, matured quietly in the background, and by 2026, it has reached a point where large organizations no longer see it as an alternative, but as a strategic foundation. One of the most immediate reasons companies are switching to Linux is cost control. Large enterprises operate tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands, of machines across offices, data centers, and cloud environments. Proprietary operating systems require licensing fees that scale with usage, creating recurring expenses that grow every year. These costs are not limited to the operating system itself. They extend to associated tools, server licenses, client access licenses, and mandatory upgrade cycles. Linux fundamentally changes this equation. Because it is open source, companies are not paying for permission to use the software. They pay only for support if they choose to, and that support can be negotiated, customized, or even replaced with in-house expertise. For companies under pressure to reduce operational costs without sacrificing capability, Linux offers a financial structure that aligns with long-term sustainability. Security is another major factor driving this transition. In 2026, cyber threats are no longer occasional incidents. They are constant, automated, and increasingly sophisticated. Large companies are targeted not just because of their size, but because of the value of their data and the complexity of their systems. Linux offers a fundamentally different security model than many proprietary systems. Its architecture is built around strong permission controls, modular components, and transparency. Because the source code is open, vulnerabilities are not hidden behind corporate secrecy. They are discovered, discussed, and fixed by a global community of developers, security researchers, and enterprise contributors. This transparency gives companies confidence. Instead of trusting a vendor's assurances, they can verify how the system works, audit it internally, and harden it according to their own security policies. Control is a recurring theme in enterprise Linux adoption. Large companies are increasingly uncomfortable with operating systems that dictate how updates are delivered, what data is collected, and when changes are enforced. Forced updates, telemetry collection, and cloud dependency have become major concerns for compliance teams and regulators alike. Linux gives organizations control over update schedules, data flows, and system behavior. Nothing changes unless the company decides it should. This is especially important in regulated industries where stability and predictability are critical. A surprise update that changes system behavior can disrupt operations, break compatibility, or violate compliance requirements. Linux allows companies to lock down environments and maintain consistent behavior over years, not months. The rise of cloud computing has accelerated Linux adoption more than any other single factor. Modern enterprise infrastructure is no longer confined to on-premise servers. It spans multiple clouds, regions, and hybrid environments. Linux is the native language of the cloud. Containers, orchestration platforms, microservices, and scalable infrastructure are all built on Linux foundations. When companies deploy applications to the cloud, they are almost always running on Linux under the hood. As a result, many organizations have realized that maintaining a different operating system on desktops and internal servers creates unnecessary complexity. By standardizing on Linux across environments, companies reduce friction between development, testing, and production, making their entire technology stack more coherent and efficient. Developer productivity plays a crucial role in this shift. Modern software development heavily relies on tools, frameworks, and workflows that are optimized for Linux. From containerized development environments to continuous integration pipelines, Linux offers native compatibility with the technologies developers actually use. In 2026, attracting and retaining technical talent is a competitive advantage. Many engineers prefer Linux because it gives them flexibility, performance, and a sense of ownership over their tools. Companies that force developers into restrictive environments risk slowing down innovation and losing talent. By adopting Linux, organizations align their internal systems with the expectations of modern technical teams. Performance and scalability are additional reasons Linux has become attractive to large enterprises. Linux can be stripped down to run on minimal hardware or scaled up to power massive data centers. It handles high workloads efficiently, manages memory effectively, and performs reliably under stress. This versatility allows companies to use the same operating system for everything from edge devices and internal servers to high-performance computing clusters. In an era where companies are processing massive amounts of data, running complex analytics, and deploying AI workloads, Linux provides the performance characteristics needed to operate at scale without artificial limitations. Artificial intelligence and machine learning have become central to corporate strategy by 2026. From recommendation systems and fraud detection to predictive maintenance and customer analytics, AI is deeply embedded in enterprise work. The vast majority of AI frameworks, libraries, and hardware acceleration platforms are designed primarily for Linux. Companies working in AI quickly realize that trying to build serious machine learning infrastructure on non-Linux systems adds friction and complexity. Linux offers direct access to GPUs, optimized drivers, and cutting-edge tools that are essential for training and deploying models at scale. As AI becomes a core business function rather than an experimental side project, Linux becomes the obvious operating system choice. Another factor often overlooked is hardware lifecycle management. Proprietary operating systems increasingly enforce strict hardware requirements that force companies to retire perfectly functional machines. In contrast, Linux runs efficiently on a wide range of hardware, including older systems. For large organizations, this translates into significant savings and environmental benefits. Extending the life of hardware reduces capital expenditures and aligns with sustainability goals. In 2026, environmental responsibility is not just a moral consideration, but a business requirement, and Linux helps companies reduce electronic waste without sacrificing performance. Vendor lock-in has become a growing concern at the executive level. Relying heavily on a single vendor for operating systems, cloud services, identity management, and productivity tools creates strategic risk. Pricing changes, policy shifts, or product discontinuations can have massive downstream effects. Linux reduces this dependency. While companies may still choose commercial support providers, they are not locked into a single vendor's ecosystem. They can switch providers, build internal expertise, or modify the system to meet their needs. This strategic flexibility is highly attractive to organizations planning for the long term. The perception of Linux as difficult to use or unsuitable for enterprise desktops has also changed significantly. Modern Linux distributions offer polished user interfaces, strong hardware support, and enterprise-ready management tools. Centralized configuration management, automated updates, and remote administration are now standard capabilities. For most office workflows, Linux can easily handle email, document creation, collaboration, and web-based applications. As more enterprise software moves to the browser, the underlying operating system matters less to end users and more to IT teams. Linux excels in this environment by being stable, efficient, and easy to manage at scale. Migration challenges still exist, but companies are addressing them pragmatically. Rather than attempting complete and immediate transitions, organizations adopt Linux gradually. They start with servers, then development environments, then specialized teams, and finally, general desktop deployments where appropriate. Legacy applications are virtualized, containerized, or replaced over time. This incremental approach minimizes risk and allows companies to learn and adapt without disrupting operations. The fact that so many companies are willing to invest in this process speaks volumes about the perceived value of Linux. Culturally, this shift reflects a broader change in how companies think about technology ownership. Instead of renting access to closed systems, organizations increasingly want transparency, adaptability, and long-term control. Open source software aligns with these values. Linux represents not just a technical decision, but a philosophical one. It signals a move away from dependency and toward autonomy. In 2026, autonomy in technology is directly linked to resilience, innovation, and competitiveness. What makes this transition particularly interesting is how quiet it is. Unlike previous technology shifts that were accompanied by aggressive marketing and public announcements, the move to Linux is happening behind the scenes. Companies are not switching for publicity. They are switching because it works. IT leaders are making calculated decisions based on performance metrics, security audits, and cost analysis. The absence of hype is, in itself, a sign of maturity. Linux no longer needs to prove itself. It is simply being chosen. As more companies adopt Linux, the ecosystem continues to strengthen. Hardware vendors provide better support, software developers target Linux as a primary platform, and enterprise tools evolve to integrate seamlessly with open source systems. This creates a feedback loop that accelerates adoption even further. Each new deployment makes Linux more viable for the next organization considering the switch. Looking ahead, it is clear that Linux will play an increasingly central role in enterprise computing. This does not mean proprietary operating systems will disappear overnight. Hybrid environments will remain common, and different systems will coexist based on specific needs. But the direction is unmistakable. Linux is no longer the underdog. It is a strategic choice embraced by organizations that value control, efficiency, security, and long-term flexibility. By 2026, the question is no longer whether Linux is ready for big companies. The real question is why any large organization would ignore it. The quiet shift we are witnessing today is laying the foundation for the next decade of enterprise technology. Linux is not just powering servers and clouds, it is reshaping how companies think about software, ownership, and the future of their digital infrastructure. And while this transformation may be happening quietly, its impact will be anything but small.